He had been beaten, broken, and left for dead countless times. Yet Paul's journey was far from over. Beyond the scars visible on his skin, beyond the bruises etched deep into his soul, there was a deeper burden he carried, a sacred, silent struggle no man dared speak of openly before. Not because the truth was unknown, but because it was too holy, too painful, and too deeply personal. Until now. Paul begins with a mysterious declaration. "I know a man in Christ," he says, 14 years ago, caught up to the third heaven. The details are unclear, even to him. He does not know whether he was in his body or out of it. Only God knows. Imagine, if you can, being lifted beyond the stars, beyond the earth, beyond all the heavens we know, into a realm of pure light and glory. The third heaven, the very dwelling place of God Himself. Paul was caught up into this indescribable place, a moment suspended outside of time and space. In that moment of eternity, Paul heard things too sacred for human lips. He saw visions so magnificent and mysterious that no human could explain them fully. This was paradise, a glimpse into the presence of God that few will ever experience. But with this great revelation came a sobering reality. For Paul, this moment in paradise did not fill him with pride. Instead, it deepened his humility and revealed the frailty of his human condition. So to keep me from becoming conceited, Paul says, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh. What was this thorn? The Bible does not say for sure. Some believe it was a physical affliction, perhaps chronic pain or illness. Others suggest it was a spiritual struggle, constant temptation, or relentless opposition. Whatever it was, this thorn was a messenger of Satan, sent to torment Paul and keep him grounded in humility. This thorn was persistent. It was a pain that refused to fade, a wound that would not heal. It pressed on him day and night, never giving rest. It silenced his pride, humbled his spirit, and kept him dependent on God's grace alone. Paul did not accept this suffering passively. He pleaded earnestly with God. 3 times he begged for relief. His prayers were heartfelt, desperate cries for healing and freedom from this burden. But heaven's answer was clear and firm. No. This refusal was not rejection or punishment. It was purpose. Sometimes God's ways are different from ours. Sometimes He chooses not to remove the pain, but to use the pain to refine us, to teach us, to transform us. Then came the words that changed everything. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Grace. Undeserved, unearned, unbreakable grace. God was telling Paul that his strength would carry him through. The power Paul longed for was not in removing the thorn, but in sustaining him despite it. Paul came to understand that his weakness was not a flaw or failure, but a place where God's strength could shine brightest. He embraced his weakness as a source of divine power, not human shame. So Paul chose to boast not in his visions or miracles, but in his weaknesses. He boasted gladly in insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities, because all these hardships bore the power of Christ resting upon him. When I am weak, Paul said, then I am strong. This was not just a clever phrase, but a profound spiritual truth that turns worldly wisdom upside down. The thorn remained with Paul all his life. It was a constant companion, a shadow he could never shake. But neither did Christ ever leave him. Through the wound flowed wisdom. Through the weakness came wonder. Through the silence of suffering was born a strength that only God could give. Paul's thorn became a source of grace, a testimony that God's power is often made perfect in our deepest struggles. We all pray for strength. We all hope for relief from pain. But sometimes God sends a thorn, not to break us, but to carry us deeper into grace. Not to defeat us, but to reveal a power beyond ourselves. The miracle is not always in what God removes, but in what He carries us through. Paul's story invites us to embrace our own thorns, our own struggles, and to trust that even in pain, God's grace is enough. In weakness, we discover a strength that cannot be earned, bought, or manufactured. It is a strength that comes only from God, who perfects His power in our weakness. This truth is both a challenge and a comfort. It is a call to stop fighting our weaknesses and start leaning into them, to stop hiding our pain and start sharing our stories. Because in our brokenness, we become living testimonies of grace. Paul's thorn shows us that the marks we carry may be the very places where God's power rests. His wounds, scars, and pain were not signs of failure, but of faithfulness. And through it all, Paul learned to say with confidence, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." His thorn became his glory, his weakness, his strength, and his suffering, the proof of God's sustaining grace. This legacy teaches us that no matter the thorn we face, whether illness, hardship, rejection, or sorrow, God's grace is sufficient. His power is made perfect when we are weak, and in that divine exchange, we find true life. So when we are tempted to despair, to give up, or to feel abandoned, we can remember Paul's story. We can remember that sometimes heaven says no, not to stop us, but to lift us up, to show us that the power to endure, to hope, and to love comes not from our strength, but from God's. Paul's thorn is a reminder that grace is enough, always, and so we come to understand that our struggles, our wounds, and even our deepest pains are not meaningless. They are not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where God's grace meets us in our weakness and transforms us from within. This is the profound mystery of faith, that the very things we wish to remove may be the very tools God uses to build us up. So let us not be ashamed of our thorns. Let us not hide the scars that life has left on us, but rather let us wear them as badges of honor, proof that we have walked through the fire, been refined by suffering, and emerged stronger because of it. For in the end, it is not the absence of pain that defines us, but the presence of grace that carries us through. Paul's thorn teaches us that weakness is not the opposite of strength, but its gateway. His story is a beacon for all who suffer, a light in the darkness reminding us that we are never alone. The power of weakness is the power of God Himself. And in that power we find hope, we find courage, we find life.